Women in these Muslim countries are extremely oppressed, and they're forced to wear those. They're not, a lot of them, it's not by choice living in those countries. What do you think about that?
I lived in those countries for a number of years. And is that a gift you're going to give them? You're going to give them their freedom? You're going to give them that? No.
No, she's not going to give them their gift of freedom, something they don't have. But people like you are going to celebrate their oppression by using it to protest in one of the freest countries, if not the freest country on the planet. Unbelievable.
What I'm trying to say is, you know, you're out here promoting women's rights, but you're promoting a woman wearing something that she's forced to wear in other countries. It's not by choice.
Forced to wear anything like that. It's her choice.
They are forced.
No, they are not.
I'm not going to dictate.
And I'm not talking to you.
No, these women are not forced to wear the headscarf or the hijab in the United States. We all know that. And there are not every country that is predominantly Muslim forces women to wear headscarf or cover up. But these type of SJWs will tell us that this is their choice and it's their women's freedom to express themselves with this. And we know very well that in countries where the headscarf and the burka are not enforced, there's quite a pressure, social pressure to wear it, and it's not a a woman covering herself is not a symbol of feminist freedom. It is not.
The line of questioning, well, she's promoting a woman that's in a hijab, and do not touch me, lady.
Sarah Hayter tweets, there are a few things less appropriate as a symbol for religious freedom than the hijab. The New York Times has, they have an op-ed about the Women's March this past Saturday, and they're highly critical of it in the identity politics region of the map. And I'll put a link to the article below in the description. But the title of the article, the op-ed, is Agenda for Women's March has been hijacked by organizers bent on highlighting women's differences. Emma Kate Simmons writes, it saddens me to see the inclusive liberal feminism I grew up with reduced to a grab bag of competing victimhood narratives and individualist identities jostling for most oppressed status. She says the controversy surrounding the exclusionary identity politics unsettling what should be a unifying event, Saturday's Women's March on Washington, shows that the fractures underpinning Hillary Clinton's devastating election loss have not healed, but the attempted hijacking of the march's agenda and all the nasty tit-for-tat between white versus black, queer, Muslim, trans, and other identity tells a very disturbing story about the divided state of feminism today. The separatist, inward-looking politics that helped drive Trump to power and Clinton into oblivion is not going away. In fact, it is becoming more entrenched, and all for the better, say organizers bent on highlighting women's differences rather than their commonality as American and international citizens. And here's where we get to the subject of this video in the article. The emphasis on a particular perspective regarding religion appears to have something to do with one of the march's lead organizers. Linda Sauersauer is a religiously conservative, veiled Muslim woman. Embracing a fundamentalist worldview requiring women to modestly cover themselves, a view which has little to do with female equality and much more a connection with the ideology of political Islam than feminism. And then she goes on to say, and why is a woman seen wearing a heavy veil pulled up tight to cover her neck, not even a headscarf, emerging as a symbol of the rally? Yes, Trump is singling out Muslims, but must we play his reductionist game?
She's got a woman wearing a hijab. Okay, at the same time, this is a women's march promoting women having equal rights to men. these women in these Muslim countries, not all, but Saudi Arabia, if you're a woman and you're walking around not wearing a hijab, you can be beaten in the street.
I'm familiar with the Saudi Arabia example.
Yeah, there's a lot of countries.
It isn't a religion, it's a government. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Well, how about that? I bet she didn't know that Saudi Arabia wasn't a religion, that it's a government. But still, it's no excuse for making the symbol of oppression for women all over the world and trying to pretend that it's some kind of symbol for liberty or freedom.
If you're just getting the anger and frustration out now, okay. But eventually we've got to get to productive strategy. Trump has been inaugurated now, and I understand feeling afraid because of your identity, but we know that this laser focus on identity politics doesn't work.
Well, I agree with David Pakman here, but apparently they want to double down on this strategy and commit to, instead of 4 years of Donald Trump, 8 years.
And identity politics couldn't even get enough people out to vote on a single day to defeat Donald Trump. And now identity politics is going to get people in the trenches to block legislation and make calls and send emails and organize boycotts, which is way more energy intensive than just voting. Wrong. It's not going to work. And Bernie Sanders had lots of support from the identity politics types. But it was catalyzed by a focus not on the immutable characteristics you're born with, but it was a class-based critique with the understanding that through class and economics and fighting corruption and cronyism, minority groups are going to be disproportionately helped. The problem with identity politics based on race and gender is that you're not appealing in a similar enough way to broad enough coalitions. The left needs a real plan here for the next 4 years, and it's not going to be catalyzed in any way by ranting about the patriarchy, citing the debunked statistic of 77 cents on the dollar, and talking about as a Muslim woman, ... What is the goal now of these protests? Trump won. We need a plan to block actions, not to talk about the patriarchy. Who's lining their own pockets versus who's actually doing something to help the average person? That's the message that will unify real broad-based progressivism rather than getting into the oppression Olympics or appealing to specific groups in this way.
And this is where you're all wrong, David Pakman, because we all know that the SJWs and feminists are morally superior to everyone else, and therefore they will tell us what is right and what is wrong. And you will not do that, and I won't do that, so shut up and listen to them. And speaking of them, let's get back to what we were watching earlier, and the SJW feminist types commanding us to listen to their moral superiority and telling us that covering up is a freedom. It's not an oppression. Do you remember that woman correcting the reporter about Saudi Arabia not being a religion, it being a government?
A religion, it's a government. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. But
What I'm trying to say is under Sharia law, which is the law that the Muslims abide by, women do not have equal rights to men.
To be clear, there are exceptionally few countries, like if any, I don't think I can name one, that follows strict Sharia law for the obvious reason that's like not generally applicable to the 21st century. Like, I'm curious what countries you think are following strictly Sharia law. In this country where we do not impose Sharia law, I think women can generally choose to wear hijabs if they so freely choose to do so. I would imagine that most American Muslims that do wear hijabs, if you were to ask them, they would say that they do voluntarily wear it. So I'm not entirely sure why you are focused on the hypothetical.
Well, we do know that in countries where everyone has freedom, like the United States, Canada, and Europe, people can do what they choose. They have that freedom. Not so other parts of the world, and that's the point.
Drawing of the woman.
Well, in a lot of the Muslim nations, it's not a choice, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm pointing out. It's not a choice in a lot of these countries for the women, and so it's kind of odd. Don't you think it's a little odd that the liberals, who are like super, pro women's rights, pro gay rights, all this stuff, are getting behind the Muslims, where they actually execute gays and they oppress women. They force them into marriages. They do honor killings where they stone them to death. A woman, if she's raped, she has to have 3 male witnesses to it. She can't even use another woman as a witness. So overall, it's pretty hypocritical for a woman to be walking around with a woman wearing a hijab as a symbol of women's rights, when in fact, you know, the hijab is in this sense oppressing women, and in Sharia law, they're very oppressive of women. But here's the point. I am actually very supportive of religious rights. Religious freedoms need to be protected, but it shouldn't get in the way of human rights. And when a religion has beliefs that get in the way of human rights, that's when there's a little bit of a problem.
In the same way that I disagree with the use of the Confederate flag as a cultural symbol, not a symbol for the Civil War in the South and secession and so forth. The same way that the head covering for women, yes, it can be cultural, and it is cultural, but it also is a symbol for oppression for millions and millions of women throughout the world. And for many people, it's also a symbol of hatred towards women. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoy this channel, please hit the like, subscribe, visit us on the social media sites. Thank you very much. Goodbye.